My wife has asked me for permission to sleep with someone she works with. She promised that if I agreed, she would allow me to sleep with anyone I wanted in return. This is completely out of the blue for me, and I don't know what to do. We've been married for a little over a year, and up until now, everything has been great between us. Like any couple, we've had a few arguments, but nothing that ever felt like it would threaten our relationship. We've never discussed anything like an open marriage or anything involving sharing each other. Then the other day, my wife asked me if I'd sleep with another woman if I had the chance. I said no, that I was completely satisfied with her, that she was everything I wanted. I was surprised when she seemed annoyed by my answer. She even rolled her eyes and said, "Really? Not with anyone?" I tried to stay firm, but she didn't let it go. After some prodding, she admitted that there is a co-worker she would be willing to sleep with. I asked her if she had spoken to him about it, or if they'd been involved in any way, but she denied it. The conversation ended there, but I couldn't shake the feeling that something wasn't right. I decided to go through her phone, and that's when I found a bunch of nude pictures she had never shared with me. After some more questioning, she confessed that she had been sending them to this coworker, and that they had been sexting. She then asked for my permission to meet up with him. She said they would keep it casual, no more than 5 meetings, and no emotional attachment. She also promised I could have a free pass too if I wanted. I was stunned. This wasn't the wife I knew. She's always been shy, never flirted with other men, and never gave me any reason to think she'd want something like this. But she admitted that she found this guy irresistible, that he had a bigger package than any man she'd been with before. She said that while she didn't like his personality, it would never be anything beyond sex, and that she would regret not doing it. She assured me she still loved me in bed, but just wanted to experience something new. She promised it would never happen again. I told her that I only wanted her, and that I didn't need a free pass. But she insisted I should take advantage of the opportunity, that she would feel bad if I didn't. She even suggested talking to some of her friends to see if any of them might be interested. I told her I didn't know what to think, and that I needed some time to process everything. I decided to sit down with her and have a serious conversation about this. I told her that I wasn't going to take her up on the free pass, and I explained why. She seemed really upset by this, and even called it immature. She said all her guy friends would jump at the chance to sleep with someone else, and she thought I was just trying to prove I was better than her. I told her I wasn't rejecting the offer to be stubborn, but because I love her. I don't need other women to feel fulfilled. She brought up our past, saying it wasn't fair that I'd slept with more women than she had men before we got married. She felt like it was only fair for her to experience this since I had. I asked her about the coworker, and after a long talk, she admitted they had already been touching each other, though they hadn't gone further yet. She said they had planned to meet up this weekend, depending on how our conversation went. She didn't want to cancel, but she promised to bring him over so I could meet him before anything happened. She tried to ease my anxiety by suggesting that I might actually enjoy watching them. She even brought up how we had done cuckold roleplay before, and that maybe I'd like it more than I thought. She promised to video it for me in case I found it exciting. I told her I wasn't sure, but I'd only know after it happened. I also told her that if I didn't like it, if I was upset afterwards and not turned on at all, I would not approve of her seeing him again. She agreed to this. Later that night, we had some of the best sex we'd had in a while. She's been really attentive, almost extra clingy, trying to make up for how upset I've been. She even made me breakfast and gave me a massage the next morning. I can tell she really cares about me and wants to make things work, but I'm still torn. So now we've come to an understanding. If I don't like how things go with the coworker, she'll break it off. If she can't do that, we'll go to counseling, and I'll prepare for the worst. A few days later, she met up with the guy. I don't want to get into too many details, but let's just say they had sex and did a lot more. When I spoke to her about it afterward, I tried to set boundaries, but she immediately got defensive. She said I didn't have the right to tell 2 adults what to do in the bedroom. I was still trying to process everything, but something about the situation left a bad taste in my mouth. Later, I asked if I could join them the next time they met. She said she would ask him, and when she came back, she told me he didn't feel comfortable with it. That got me wondering, is it normal for there to be no boundaries in open or cuckold relationships? The next weekend, things took another turn. She left on Saturday morning, didn't kiss me goodbye, and even made me take pictures of her to send to the guy. At first, she said she'd be back that night, but by nighttime, she still wasn't home. The next morning, she told me she had stayed at his place without asking me first. But that wasn't even the worst part. That night, she and the coworker invited a friend over, and she slept with both of them. When she came back, she told me everything, and I just couldn't take it anymore. I was devastated. She laughed it off, told me to get over it, and said it wasn't manly for me to be upset. It was clear she didn't care about me anymore. No spouse would speak to their partner like that if they truly loved them. Before this, she had always been the most loving and caring woman I knew. It's like something changed when she met this guy. It's like a switch flipped, and I don't even recognize her anymore. I'm almost certain she's going to end up with him. She spends almost every weekend with him now and talks about him like he's already a part of her life. I told her that if she didn't set some boundaries, I'd have to leave. I don't know where this relationship is headed anymore. She agreed and laughed a lot. Without saying much else, I quickly packed my bags and booked a room at the nearest hotel. I called my brother to explain the situation, and he offered to let me stay with him for a while. That night, I ended up at his place. She sent me some texts that evening and the next day, acting upset and confused about why I left, telling me she missed me. The following day, I knew I had to go back to my house. If not, I might lose everything. My brother came with me for support. When we arrived, she tried to talk to me, but I had nothing left to say, so I ignored her and tried to walk past her. She grabbed me, trying to hold on, but my brother stepped in, warning her he'd call the police if she didn't stop. She finally left. I haven't heard from her since. This whole situation has crushed me. I tried so hard to please her, to make her happy, even when I never wanted any of it in the first place. I didn't want to go through with it, but I convinced myself I could make it work. I never saw the signs of how manipulative she was, how much of a different person she could become. She was once the most caring, thoughtful person I had ever known. Now, everything has changed. My view on life and relationships has been completely shattered. So, what advice do you have for me? What should I do now with her? And what about my future when I eventually start dating again? How do I tell our families and friends? How should I talk to her? I'm struggling to process everything that's happened. Update 4. After leaving her last week, I stayed with my brother. After talking things through with him and reading some of your comments, I decided it would be best to return to my house and make sure I didn't lose everything before the divorce was final. The next day, I went back with my brother. When we got there, she immediately tried to talk to me, grabbing at me. I ignored her completely, acting like she wasn't even there. She got rough, hitting my chest, and I had no choice but to push her away. My brother stepped in and threatened to call the police if she didn't leave me alone. Finally, she walked away. I didn't hear from her the rest of the night. The next day, she sent me a picture of herself with a new coworker. Just a selfie. No message, nothing. I showed it to my brother, and he said that if she thought that was going to hurt me, she was out of her mind. I had my first consultation with a divorce lawyer, and it went well. He told me that the photos and videos I have could be useful evidence in the case, but he also warned that she might argue I agreed to everything, despite the manipulation. My brother and I then went to my parents to tell them what was going on. They were shocked and almost didn't believe it, but my brother backed me up, confirming everything. They wanted to talk to her, but I told them not to. Next, I had to decide whether to tell her parents. I debated this for a while. I wasn't sure if it was my place, but I eventually realized I had to. If I didn't, she would likely twist things and lie to them. So, I set up a time to meet them at their house and went alone. After some small talk, I finally told them everything. The looks on their faces were almost too much to bear. They were disgusted, totally shocked. What surprised me even more was that they didn't blame me at all. They understood that I had tried everything to make things work, and they even hugged me before I left. It was emotional. They knew divorce wasn't what I wanted, but they also understood it was the only option now. Over the weekend, I spent most of my time talking to my lawyer and hanging out with my brother. Then, on Saturday night, I got a text from my wife saying she was coming over. I texted back that she wasn't welcome, but she came anyway, showing up about 20 minutes later. At that point, I felt like I had no choice but to talk to her. She said she'd been talking to her parents, and they were angry, mentioning the possibility of divorce. I hadn't told her yet, so I was hoping they hadn't shared that with her. She called what I did childish and said I wasn't a real man for talking to her parents first. I told her I didn't feel comfortable talking to her anymore because of how manipulative she'd been. I explained that I had talked to her parents first because I knew if I didn't, she'd lie to them about everything. She asked if I was really filing for divorce, and I confirmed that I was. She broke down in tears, sobbing uncontrollably. For the next 15 minutes, she didn't say a word. Eventually, she asked me why I was doing this and why I didn't give her a heads up. I told her that the way she had treated me, especially with the coworker, had humiliated me. I told her I couldn't take her back. She left after that, but the next morning, I woke up to a flood of texts and missed calls from her, voicemails and long messages apologizing and telling me how much she loved me. Listening to them was painful. It hurt so much because I was reminded of the person I thought she was, the woman I once loved. I cried for a long time, but I kept reminding myself of everything she'd done. Since that night, I've gotten even more texts from her friends, calling me names and telling me how wrong I was for talking to her parents first. They said that now I've taken everything from her, and she has no one left. It's been such a crazy, emotional few days. I still can't believe that even her parents are on my side. I feel guilty for telling them first, but I'm glad they understand. Her friends, on the other hand, continue to attack me, sending threats. I haven't heard from her since those long messages. I'm guessing she's either with her coworker or staying with her friends since her parents aren't speaking to her. I can't believe I've been able to stand up to her like this. It's been such a difficult journey, but I'm finally starting to realize my own strength. This weekend was a turning point for me. I know I can continue to stand my ground. Thank you all for your kind words and support. I'll keep you updated as things progress.